Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Ask the Expert with your teen. I'm happy to be here with journalist Lisa Lewis, who has a brand new book coming out next week called The Sleep-Deprived Teen. And the subtitle is Why Our Teenagers Are So Tired and How Parents and Schools Can Help Them Thrive. I'm super excited to talk about this. I've had a chance to see the book before it comes out next Tuesday, and it's terrific, very helpful.
Thank you so much, Sharon. I really am so glad to hear that.
Do you have a copy there you can show us in the
Well,
flesh?
it just so happens that I
Uh-huh.
do. Yes, the sleep-deprived
Okay.
teen, why our teenagers are so tired and how parents and schools can help them thrive.
Yes.
So
And
yeah,
you
it
don't
is,
have to wait till next Tuesday to order it. You can order it now and then it will come to you automatically, usually that very day. So don't
yes,
wait if you like what you hear today. There's tons more. One of the problems, Lisa, was that I thought we're not going to get to everything in this book, but we'll just give a taste and hit the important points.
okay, sure.
So let's start out by asking, how much sleep do our teenagers really need? I feel like as a mom of two teenagers in a middle school, they almost don't believe me when I say, well, so tell us what the expertise really says about how much sleep our kids are supposed to be getting.
Yeah, it is. It's more than I think people maybe fully realize because for teens up until age 18, it is 8 to 10 hours every single night. And those are the official recommendations from the National Sleep Foundation. So younger kids, it's 9 to 11 hours. But for our teens, it is 8 to 10 hours up until they're 18. And only then do they shift to adult hours, which is still 7 to 9? Everyone talks about maybe 8 or 7 hours. Well, that's on the lower end for adults, and it's not even hitting even the minimum amount for teens. So it is 8 to 10 hours.
Right. So if kids in middle school, say they're 11, 12, they should still be hitting that high end or that 9 to 11. And
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. It is up until age 14. The range is 9 to 11 hours.
okay.
And after that, it's 8 to 10 hours. And of course, it isn't, magically on their birthdays that they're going to suddenly need an hour less sleep. So
Right.
it is a gradual process. But even so, I think so many people are surprised to know that for teens, it's 8 to 10 hours. That is the range of the normal recommended sleep they should be getting. So many people, again, I mentioned 8, because that's sort of the magic number everyone hears about. And so many people think, oh, well, I'm getting close to 8, or maybe my teen's getting 7.5. But if you extrapolate that, that's a cumulative sleep debt that they are accumulating over the course of the week. If, say, every school night, they're never hitting even that minimum amount. And that really has some pretty significant effects in terms of mental health, in terms of everything, really. I mean, in terms of their ability to learn, which is, of course, the whole reason they're in school in the first place. It's got public health implications, drowsy driving. If they're an athlete, it affects their performance. I mean, across the board, there's nothing that our teens or anybody does better by being sleep deprived.
Okay, so let's break that down a little bit. I know that most of us parents are concerned about mental health in particular these days because, we've seen the numbers have spiked of, depression, anxiety, even suicide. And, we want to prioritize that for our kids. So can you talk a little bit about the connection between mental health and sleep?
Yes, it is such an important connection to be aware of because there really is a link between sleep and particularly sleep deprivation and our ability I mean, broadly, just to cope with life. And when you think about it, when we're sleep deprived, everything is harder. And so for our teens, it heightens impulsive behavior, which they're already more prone to, to begin with. You have stronger emotions when you're sleep deprived. And there is absolutely a link between the amount of sleep you get and mental health conditions like depression and anxiety and even suicidality. I mean, literally, there's research where they have found it's what they call a dose response relationship. So for each hour of lost sleep, there's a measurable change. And one study I can just quote, I mean, this one really jumped out at me. Fairfax County, each hour of lost sleep was linked to a 42% increase in suicidal thoughts and a 58% increase in suicide attempts. So you hear that as a parent, and oh my God, I mean, I think that really brings it home how important sleep is. It's not just a nice to have. It's an essential function. Obviously, we need it to live, but when we are forcing our teens to go through life being sleep deprived, there are some real implications.
So, what do we do when those mental health concerns are keeping our kids from perhaps falling asleep as soon as they can, or sleeping as soundly as they can? Maybe we can get into some practical ways to support teen sleep, assuming that we have prioritized the sleep. Now, how do we make it happen?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, because as a parent, you can't just
That's
say,
a
go
very
ahead.
big question. I realize that. We can break it down.
Yeah. Well, so the first thing I would say is just to for the audience, I'm not a medical professional. So if your teen is struggling with depression and mental health issues, those are issues you do want to be going to a medical provider and really paying attention to. That being said, though, being chronically sleep deprived absolutely can exacerbate those. But I think you're referring more to just sort of on a daily basis. When we know our teens need more sleep, what can we do to kind of help them with that? So I think, I harp on this a lot, but it really does come back to just making sleep a priority, I think, is the overarching message. So starting with knowing that teens need 8 to 10 hours. Because that, again, so many people don't necessarily realize that. So many teens probably don't realize that is the normal recommended amount. They should be getting 8 to 10.
Yes, I've heard from my teens, nobody sleeps that much.
No, and they're not wrong, because unfortunately, teens are massively sleep deprived. The last data from the CDC, I think it was 2019, I think it was only 22% of high schoolers were getting at least 8 hours of sleep a night.
Yeah, and it seems like when we're worried about our teens, generally, it seems like maybe this is the starting point that we can work from. So
absolutely. I'm sorry. But then you were asking, so what do you do then? Like, how do you help them do it?
Do they need a routine like we did with the babies and toddlers?
That is exactly right. You probably don't need to go in and, sit on the floor and read them a book, which is nice, because I just remember those evenings felt endless when my kids were little.
Yeah.
Where you'd read books and it's like an hour and a half of reading every single night. But that being said, the teens themselves, they should have a wind down routine. Frankly, we all should. And that's something I've really tried to pay more attention to now, as I've really been immersed in all the research and talking to the sleep experts. So that wind down routine, up to personal discretion. But the whole idea of having a set series of steps that primes you to go to sleep, because it's the same thing we did when our kids were little. That's exactly it. They'd hear, good night moon, and they'd know, oh, I'm now into that mode. And it's just the way our brains work. So, it can be, well, and first of all, I should say it ideally should not involve being on your tech devices.
Okay, that was what I was going to ask. Do we set a drop-dead time where all devices have to be put away X hours? What should we have a cutoff? It should be an hour before bed, 2 hours before we want them asleep, or what?
Yeah. So the official recommendation, this is the American Academy of Pediatrics, is no tech use an hour before bedtime.
Okay.
So yes, there is an official recommendation you can refer to.
Okay.
And I try to, that also applies to us as adults. That's the other piece. I think when we're encouraging our teens and trying to help them get to bed at a reasonable time, they need to see that we are walking the talk. So I think they need to see this when we say sleep is a priority, we're making it a priority too. Right. So for instance, tech devices, ideally, they should not be in the bedrooms at night. And that is something where, as a family, you can have a tech rule. We charge all our devices in the kitchen. But the key word there is all. So that means it's not just, oh, teen, I'm going to take your phone and put it in the kitchen, that our phones go in there too, so that they see that we are doing the same and we really take this to heart.
It's a house rule, not like a punishment or a discipline for because they're so okay.
Yeah.
All right, that makes sense. It seems like it'd be easier to swallow if the parents are on board too.
Yeah. And it's also sort of letting them see that we value sleep, that we're taking steps. So, for me, I read a book before bed, an actual old school book, a print book. So then you don't have to worry about a Kindle, because there are issues of blue light, which is part of why tech can help keep us and our teens up too late. As an aside, though, that's one piece, but especially, and this will make perfect sense, especially for teens, it's the interactive quality. It's the fact that it's keeping them revved up emotionally that really also plays a huge role. Because when you're on social media or you're playing a video game, I mean, that's the whole thing. You are immersed in it. So it's that aspect that the sleep experts I spoke to really saw as perhaps more problematic in terms of helping people drift off to sleep than the blue light aspect. And then the other piece too is if you're up until 1 a.m., well, you're cutting into those sleep hours. So those are really the pieces to be aware of. But so I read a book, so that doesn't necessarily work for everyone, but I got some great suggestions when I was out trying to gather, exactly all this advice. Podcasts are a great thing because you're just listening. But even, there was one sleep expert, and it was such a great idea, which is you can listen to one of your favorite TV episodes. You don't have to watch it, especially, when people want to replay whatever, The Office. I know, teens were really into a couple years ago, and you can go back and replay your favorite episode, but you don't have to watch it. You can just listen to it.
So that's sort of a compromise between all tech being gone and easing into sleep somehow.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good point. So there is that. Also things like lighting to pay attention to. So overall lighting in the home I'm referring to, because you do have the light from the devices. And even for that, if you think about it, when you're on your phone and it's, this close to your face, that has more of an impact than if you're watching TV across the room. So that's one piece. But overall lighting in the home makes a difference too. Because, you think about it, before electricity, people went to bed earlier. There wasn't anything to do, but also the darkness cued us to be sleepy earlier. And that's one of the things that the spectrum of light includes blue light. Blue light is particularly something that we get from those devices, but it's part of the overall light in our homes too. Yeah. So you can start dimming the lights in your home about 10 o'clock at night. You can swap out the lights in, the lamp on your nightstand, so it's a warmer tone. There are, something that's more in the orange or even pinkish kind of tones, which some teens like because, mood lighting. But that's the kind of color spectrum you should be aiming for, as opposed to the blue side of the spectrum.
Now, have you seen any research on how the blue light glasses, like if my teenager says, well, I have blue light glasses and it's okay if I look at my phone, or I look at my phone in night mode. You know how you can change it to the black background. Do those things help?
That's a good question. Yeah. And I did ask those same things. Those can help, actually. So one of the experts who's done, these studies where they actually evaluate the efficacy of different, blue blockers. And his takeaway was, but if you can still see blue, they're not being
okay.
Effective. So it doesn't matter how much they cost, but that's the takeaway. But he's also the same person who was explaining to me about the light from the device being close to you versus further away. So that is also something, to let our teens know about. But yes, those are other ways to help with the blue light aspect, but that doesn't deal with the interactive aspects of it. Or again, if you're on until 2 a.m., you're cutting into your sleep no matter what.
It's just a matter of quantity if you're going too late, besides the fact of the light and the stimulation of being on the device.
But that stimulation piece, when you really look into it, it was kind of astounding to me because I really didn't grasp the extent of how much all of our tech, and especially social media, has been designed to be immersive. There's a reason why, even television shows, when you're streaming and there's just that automatic countdown and then it boom goes to the next one. It's just to keep you sucked in. And it's the same way with social media, things like likes. Those are designed to appeal to our reward systems, which in teens are really strong, and to keep you sucked in. So they are doing exactly what the tech designers want them to. And that's why it's so hard to kind of pull them out and to help them understand, no, you actually want to be, backing away from those during the hours leading up to sleep, because otherwise it is so easy to just be immersed and to stay involved for hours.
Right. Right. Well, I want to point out to our viewers, either now or those who watch later, that your book, The Sleep-Deprived Teen, has tons of practical tips on helping kids wind down or set a routine, and also a lot of information about the health benefits of sleep and the disadvantages. But I was hoping we could talk a little bit about school start times, because if parents in our audience are concerned about school start times because they know that teens' circadian rhythm means that it's hard for them to go to bed early enough to get enough sleep with those early start times, there's a lot of helpful advice in your book about how to approach that. So I was wondering if we could start by talking about, say what should my kids' school start time be? Let's start there. So how do I know if my kids is too early?
Yeah, good question. So again, official recommendation, the American Academy of Pediatrics, middle and high school should start no earlier than 8:30 in the morning. And that is because, as you were just alluding to, they have a different body clock. Their circadian rhythm shifts at puberty, so that what primes them to go to sleep, which is melatonin, isn't released as early in the evening. So they're not really able to start falling asleep until at least 11. And then, for them to get 8 to 10 hours, you do the math, they have to be able to sleep in later in the morning. And there are some schools out there where the morning bell, mandatory first period class, starts at 7:30 or 7 in the morning, which makes that impossible. So 8:30 is the recommendation, because that's a policy change and it's a public health issue when you think about teen sleep. So that's exactly why the AAP came out with that recommendation, and pretty much every other medical group out there has made similar recommendations.
Right. And when you think about kids waking up, having time for breakfast, driving to school, or taking a bus to school, and what time they'd have to catch that bus, we can quickly see how that cuts into the morning time. So, if my kid is starting at 7:50, is there a starting point? What's the first thing I do if I'm concerned? Do I get armed with information by reading a book like yours? Sure, I'm sure that would be great. But then now I know, I've read your book. I've educated myself. What do I do? Do I talk to other parents? Do I talk to the district?
All of the above.
Okay.
Start with the book. But in all seriousness, it does start with awareness. I mean, that's what that's my takeaway, is sort of being aware of teen sleep needs is where everything stems from. Because once you are aware that teens need 8 to 10 hours, and helping parents understand. I think it starts with the parents. So that's what I did in my local community. For example, my son's high school, this was back in 2015, which is what started me on this whole journey. His high school started at 7:30 in the morning. And it quickly became apparent that was too early. And so that's when I started looking into it, led me on this whole entire journey. But I also was working locally and connecting with other parents. So I started a local chapter of a group called Start School Later. It's a national nonprofit advocating for healthy start times. And this change has been made in hundreds of districts around the country. There's no central database of schools that have changed their start time. So I don't have an exact number, but just by tracking media coverage, that's how this is known. And it's happened in districts as small as a single high school to cities like Seattle. So, I mean, this has happened broadly, but not broadly enough, because when you look at it, there's still far too many schools that are starting too early. So, so it starts with finding like-minded parents, but also helping raise awareness among the parent community. Because I think, number one, parents often don't realize kids really need 8 to 10 hours, but then two, just to help them understand the profound implications when our teens are chronically sleep deprived, because it does affect everything. I mean, we could go into, I literally have like chapters on mental health and risky behaviors and what it means even for learning. I mean, the whole point of our kids being in school is to be there to learn and to be able to absorb and retain information. there are literally kids who are falling asleep on their desks at 7:30 in the morning. So they're not learning. And even the ones who are, awake, their eyes are open, but there's nothing really going on behind the scenes because they're kind of like zombies,
Mhm.
So that's not setting them up in an optimal stage for learning either.
Right, right. Yeah, there's so many aspects to this, and we haven't even touched on driving. Um, so
Yeah.
I don't want to keep you too long. I feel like we could talk for hours about this, but I want to encourage everyone to take a look at your book. We're so glad to have had you on. I think that this has been really helpful, and we look forward to hearing more and hopefully helping our kids get better sleep.
Thank you. Yes, I really hope. May we all sleep well.
That's right. Parents too. All right. Take care, everyone.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.